This is Faye again, and this is Feisworld podcast. But I've been live streaming all these conversations since I think May 2020. I made a decision that I'm not going to over edit anything. I want people to be able to consume and enjoy the conversation right away. And today I have a very, very special guest, Maisha Dyson, who found me because of the documentary. We had lovely conversations. Maisha, worked as an actress, but so many other roles as well, you guys. She's very well versed, and you will notice this right away as part of this conversation. She is a former actress, a professor, entrepreneur turned author, public speaker, creative producer, and now she runs her own show called United We Slay. I am, as I'm recording this, the latest guest.
Yes.
And you're featured on Dash Radio, and your parents are famous. And I only learned that before recording, which I'm really thrilled because I'm here for you. You're the reason why we're here.
Yeah. Oh, very cool.
Welcome, Maisha.
Thank you for having me, Faye. Such an honor. So glad to be here with you.
So I'm really glad you're here because when you interviewed me recently, I thought to myself, wow, I could really talk to this woman for a long time. And I think today we have a very special opportunity where we can really be so open and transparent. And that's something I noticed like after I turned 30 is like, now I can just tell the world the truth about me. I can just be me. So
Yeah.
I want exactly that for this episode.
Yeah, for sure. There is something about age. And the older we get, the more you really just kind of start to let your hair down and go, look, I'm getting back to like my 5-year-old self when it comes to just showing up as I am. Take it or leave it. These are my life experiences. And here I am. You just own your space unapologetically, right? And so, that's been the story of my life. It's evolving, intentionally evolving, and being open to change. And with that, you take the good, the bad, the ugly. Sometimes you fall, sometimes you get up, sometimes you're winning, sometimes you have support, sometimes you don't. But
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, you find yourself in this place. And for me, it's always about, am I being authentic, and who
Mm-hmm.
I am and what it is I want to create and share with others. So
You mentioned, you now can be your 5-year-old self. I gotta ask, what were you like when you're 5 years old? If you still remember.
feisty, bossy, didn't give a fuck. I mean,
Yeah, please feel free.
hysterical. I mean, literally like a little, my mom used to call me like little Mussolini. It was really just, I knew what I wanted and I didn't overthink it and I wasn't insecure about it. And I loved everybody. So in my mind, I was doing things for everyone. So, if they told me I could not have a cookie, but I had 5 guests over, I go, okay. And then I wait for them to leave and I go get what we needed because it was for the greater good. That was my justification.
Yeah, do you? I mean, you said you were fearless
Mhm.
at the time. Did you? That's when you were 5 years old, and I have a couple of really good friends. I just love their little girls, and they're running around like some of them are tomboys, and they're expressing themselves. Did you ever witness a change in yourself at some point that you remember? Did you become a different person, or do you feel like you're able to embrace that
Yeah.
child self? Or
It's interesting. I've had different milestones in my life that definitely made me step back and look at myself, and I changed. Now, some of it was uncomfortable, like my body language, even in speaking with it. I remember going the first time I went to college, and I went to an all-girl college in the South. I grew up with brothers, so I figured, let's try something different. I
mm-hmm.
got to college and it was such a unique experience than what I was used to that I withdrew a little bit. Even though I was social, I was doing more observation. I wanted to see what the norm was. What is it like to have sisters? What is it like to go to this all girl school? And then once I kind of gained my confidence in my space, I just owned it. And, at the time, I was a theater major, which was not a very common degree to go and get, especially for African Americans. Like, during the time I was in college, people were going for sciences and they were going for math and English. But let me go back because when I did enter college, I was a chemistry major. I was thinking like, let me please my parents, do like my older brother who was on this pre-med journey. And chemistry was something that I killed it in high school. So I was like, oh, I got this. I can do this. I can become a dentist. After my first year, I was so like depleted energetically because it was not something I was passionate about. You can be good at something, but
Mm,
not passionate about it.
mhm,
So I remember calling home and I told my parents, listen, my older brother, he's a rock star. He's holding it down. He's
mhm,
in, school, finished his degree, going to med school. I don't think I can do this. And they started laughing. They said, we kind of wondered why you picked that. We've known you to be passionate about performing arts your whole life. So we figured maybe you're going to be the dancing dentist, right?
mhm,
So that shift happened. Anytime things have happened personally or just trying something new, I do step back and I humble myself
mm,
because I like being a beginner. I know when it's time to set something down and expand or try something new. And so yeah, those things do pop up and I look back and I go, oh, that's a completely different person, completely different person, completely different person.
mhm.
Never having imposter syndrome, mind you, but it's just like, oh, this no longer serves me. Let me shed this. And I like that. So let's put that on, you
Mm.
know? And so that's been the journey. Hmm.
I think as women, I mean, as human beings, we change really quickly, rapidly. And I noticed when you said 5 years old, and that's such a magical age, not to mention like, there's a TV show right now, I forgot, it's like the first, 2000 days or something before you become an adult. And it's fascinating to me because there's a huge difference between a 5 and a 6.5 year old. By the time you get to school, you surround yourself with a community, with teachers. You've been told what you're good at, what you're not good at. You're now in a much more diverse group of people. So to kind of lay the groundwork a little bit, sometimes I don't get into the habit of asking my guests. But you're now, Maisha, now you're in LA. Where did you grow up? Like, where did you travel to give people a
Oh,
sense of
oh
your
my
upbringing?
goodness. So in my family, I grew up in Chicago, born and
Mm-hmm.
raised. It's where I spent my most time. And I
Mm-hmm.
left after high school. But I grew up in a family that, every 4 years, leaving high school, my parents moved to different states because my dad was teaching at different colleges,
Oh.
had different tenures at different places. So Chicago, I spent the longest time. Then I went to Atlanta for undergrad, New York for grad, LA, where I worked coming out of grad school. I spent time in Nashville and DC and Miami. I've lived all over.
Mhm.
Um, Never have I ever had a traditional, I guess, upbringing. We were used to traveling every 4 years. Again, my parents still doing it, so I found it as an adventure. You go somewhere, decide what it is you're going to do in that place or with a purpose. But
Mhm.
each place, I just felt like you get to reinvent yourself. And so I take those parts of each city that I've had a chance to tap into at different times of my life. And I always put them in my toolbox, those skills and people who I loved and had a chance to grow with. And we keep moving forward.
Mhm.
So my upbringing has been diverse as far as locations here in the US and time spent there. But each
Mhm.
one I felt was so necessary based on where I was in life. Hmm.
Mm. Because I find that, for example, the show that you're running right now, United We Slay, it's about diversity. There are men and women being interviewed. I especially love the fact that you interviewed your dad, who is incredibly knowledgeable, and there's such comfort in you two talking together, and so I just wonder because I've experienced that even by moving 40 minutes away from Boston to Western Mass recently. And I experienced kind of I don't want to call it a culture shock because it would be, sounds exaggerated, but it's actually not because the kind of the diversity of the people have changed drastically.
Right.
That I used to live in a neighborhood, literally, if I may just describe it,
Yeah.
Jewish family, Chinese families, Indian families. And there are also a lot of, let's say, mixed race couples, children.
Yeah.
And to me, it's just incredible. And
Yeah.
everybody is so open. And to me, there's a certain level of comfort. Now, for somebody else, could be very uncomfortable. And
Right.
Right now, I'm living in a lovely neighborhood still, and the scenery changes where, I'm not trying to crack a joke or anything, but it's a big community where there's one black family, we're the only Chinese family,
Right.
and there may be one Indian family. And so it's very, very different.
Mhm.
So I wonder, through your experience, what are some of the traveling moments that felt, wow, you really felt like you fit in versus the ones that you learned a lot from, but perhaps it was uncomfortable, if you could recall?
Got it. So let's start. I guess, and this is interesting. It goes really back again to my childhood. I've
Mm,
always been comfortable with diversity. So the neighborhood I grew up in Chicago is called High Park. It's where the University of Chicago is located. So when you grow up in a neighborhood like that, there is an influx of cultural diversity. You have students and, coming from all over the world and professors. And so I've always been in that academic environment, even as a kid. And so my classmates were from all over. My best friend was from Chile. I remember I was in first grade. I could not tell you where this place was on a map. And she had to go back because her grandfather had passed away. So I went home and my grandmother goes, why are you crying, Maisha? I said, because my best friend, she has to go back home. She goes, well, where is she from? I said, somewhere cold. It's really cold. It's called Chile. Right? But my class was just diverse, Jewish and Mormon and Muslim and Indian and Asian, and I loved it because everyone shared their culture with each other, right? So that was the hub. The times I've been most uncomfortable has been when I found myself living in cities that was pretty much homogeneous, where it was like going back into the 60s and things were just black and white. It did something to me. I felt like this is so restrictive. This is the stuff my parents talked about. This is things that I've seen on these documentaries like Eyes on the Prize. I thrive better on coastal cities, New York, Miami, LA, right? Because it's diversity and everyone is thrown in and you figure stuff out and you bond with people based on natural affinities. You show up and you just stay open and your world becomes super adventurous, really cool, and it grows, it opens. But cities like Boston, Nashville at the time, and Chicago at the time, because outside of our little community, Chicago is still segregated. I mean, offensively segregated, it made me uncomfortable. And I said, okay, after high school, I'm out. I take what I love, but I would never move back to a city that felt so just culturally, people going at it, very racial. It was a lot of racial tension. That's something I saw outside of our little community of Hyde Park, so to speak. So that would be, yeah, I think where everything started to come together for me as far as seeing the value of
Mm-hmm.
diversity. And I'm going to say one more thing. I remember speaking to my mom, and again, I think it's generational. She would always say out loud I did like the ethnicity or the religion of her friends before she announces them. She'll go, my Jewish girlfriend, Helen, my West African girlfriend, so and so. And I go, Mom, why do you always announce where people are from before you say it?
Yeah.
But that's given her the era in which she came up, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I saw where my siblings and I are at an advantage generationally as being an African American, where we were put in educational programs that were so diverse,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't announce differences because it's something that you're kind of, you're taught, but we didn't see. I'm just like, oh, my friends, we just look different, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that was the start of it for me. It's something I've always valued, always, always, always like wanted to travel the world. The moment I saw a McDonald's Happy Meal calendar that talked about all the different places you could go.
Yeah.
And oh, to add to it, I went to a language academy as a child. So I started learning French at the age of 6, or you could pick German or Japanese. And so, it was just there. It was built in. And I swear to you, it's the fabric of like who I am, big time. Mhm.
And wow, did you continue your French lessons or like, are you
Oh
conversational?
yeah. From elementary all the way through college. Unfortunately, my parents didn't speak French.
Yeah.
So I had all this information that I didn't get a chance to use until my daughter. who I have speaking French. I took her to France so that
Oh.
she did not experience, again, not having an outlet to really exercise those talents you've been learning, right? Those skill sets.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I've always had the information, just couldn't utilize it at, at home because they couldn't speak it, you know? So, yeah.
You know, you possess a lot of skills. You have a lot of empathy. Super easy to talk to,
Thank you.
and I noticed that has learning a different language, lived in different places, seem
Mhm.
to be a popular trait from what I can tell.
Mhm.
Actors and actresses, you can imitate different accents. You can kind of being able to put yourself in a situation. Do you think that has something to do with you potentially, at the time exploring and a career in acting? Tell us a bit more
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. So here's the deal. Acting was not something I set out to do.
Hmm.
In Chicago at the age of 16, I was performing professionally. So I went to a really amazing school, Whitney Young, which is a performing arts academic school. So I've always had one path in academia. It was always important. And then my passion. And my passion was dance. From the time I was 3, it was that something that I couldn't stop,
Yeah.
sitting your grandmother down and your aunts. I would put on those recitals. Everybody come. It's starting at Sunday at this time. And I couldn't get it out of my system. It was who I was. I'm meant to perform. When I got to college, I remember sitting in the library studying for one of these chemistry exams,
Awesome.
right? And a guy friend of mine who knew I was a dancer, he goes, "Hey, Maisha, Debbie Allen is like on campus and she's auditioning to put together a performing arts ensemble. You should come." So I was like, "Debbie Allen, yeah, I've seen, Another World and these great like spin-offs of the Cosby Show. I'll go." So I walked in and she gives us, this audition script, and lines, and we had to dance. And she goes, "Come on back at 5." And I went in and had the time of my life. And I go, this is what was missing, right, in my existence. And I would love to be a part of this ensemble. And I end up making the ensemble. And I was finding that although I was still dedicated to chemistry and being disciplined, when it came to rehearsals, I preferred to sit 15 hours a day in that black box theater than anywhere else. I said, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to do. And that's when I made that phone call to my parents. So as I'm doing that, I still didn't have career in mind. I just thought, oh, this is just my outlet. Sure enough, I believe when something is meant for you and you have the skill set, but and it's supposed to be, it's your destiny. It finds you.
Mm.
So once again, I was sitting somewhere at a library in the summer, and a friend tells me about an audition in Atlanta. I go to it. It was for a film, and I booked the audition. Never acted in my life, but I guess dance lends itself to acting.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how my career started. Immediately, it was like SAG film, and then I got a TV show 2 months later, and I just kept booking stuff. Where I started to get scared because I still was studying, thinking, well, wait, I don't have the chops yet. But evidently, something was coming through that I did. So, what acting was for me at that time, and you nailed it, I'm an empath. So for me, it was really about allowing myself, Maisha, to step aside and be used as a vessel to drop into someone else's shoes. Allow me to tell your story. But to do that, I have to be authentically present. I have to be egoless, drop that ego and let go and trust. And so it's almost like you're holding the hands of God, universe, something bigger
Mm-hmm.
that's walking you. And when I did that is when I was met with opportunity of these of acting jobs. It just came. And I would go, another? Okay, let's try it. So it was really about, in my mind, being of service. How do I tell stories about girls that look like me that I know little other Black girls in Chicago would see,
Mm-hmm.
because they may not want to pick up a book and read about, but this is the perfect medium. So I thought that this was a tool for me to be of service in order to be a role model to other little girls who I thought were taking this journey behind me. And
Yeah.
that's how the career got started.
I mean, that's really interesting you brought that up because not until 5 seconds ago, I didn't realize because I see you and it becomes apparent to me. It's like, yeah, of course, Maisha should be an actor. Yeah, of course, and dancer. And I realized as part of this show that I've been running since 2014, I've interviewed a lot of actors and actresses. I know collectively they would prefer to be called actors, from Broadway, musicals to on screen TV and movie. Not a whole lot, but I feel like I have some exposure to it. And of course,
Mhm.
several and many of them are what we consider, definitely, people of color and, represents diversity in the films that have been placed in. But it also created a lot of challenges, like serious challenges for them, including one of my friends who's half Korean, half Irish.
Mhm.
And they really had such difficulties in placing him. We had these discussions. How did it impact your career? And
Very difficult. I mean, that's a really great point. So I found on this journey, when people choose to become actors and you study at colleges, universities, or even, some of these, like here in LA, they have, actors workshops you can pop into and just go through annually.
Mhm.
During the time of my journey, there were very limited African American actresses that were one booking work. And there was also equally a huge amount of actresses who wanted to take these, take this path on as a career. But it was not enough, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And we had to compete with people out of our age range because there were not enough roles for us.
Mhm.
It's definitely not what we've seen the past 3 to 4 years here, right? You could turn on Netflix and it's unlimited television showing cultural diversity, sexual, diversity, whatever it is, right? At
Mhm.
different ethnicities. But at that time, I remember going into auditions and, Regina King is coming out. Well, she's been on television for 20 years. I remember watching her when I was like 8. I said, how can I compete with this?
Yeah.
Or Halle Berry being the only one, at the time booking roles. A Vivica Fox, a Teresa Randall, Michael Michelle. These were women who were older than me, but who I looked up to.
Mhm.
So when you start to see limitations based on Hollywood deciding, no, we'll take one of this and one of that. And
Mhm.
one, remember, like Joy Luck Club. I remember watching that and I was like, okay, how come we don't see more film? It was one of my favorite films growing up. I said, how come we don't see more of this? And then it takes 20 more years for us to see, Crazy Rich Asian. What
Uh-huh.
world are we living in? This is not the world that I knew,
Mhm.
right? So that journey was difficult, not because the talent wasn't there. I mean, I was in programs and met actors all over the world who were incredible. And today they are not acting, nowhere near the medium because it was so challenging, right?
Mhm.
Uh, so that impacted my career in many ways. I still had some success. It wasn't what it could be, but let me say, embarking on this journey is about it's a marathon. It's
Mhm.
not a sprint, right? And so you have moments where you work, moments where you don't, moments where you work, moments where you don't. That is why I've always had one foot on both sides of either something I created myself, being an entrepreneur or a teacher, and then performing arts. You had to have that duality
Mm.
to fill the void. I couldn't sit just waiting on things to happen to me. I'm not that personality.
Mhm.
So it was always, I had two things happening at the same time, my entire life. And I always paired it originally with education.
Mhm.
Again, going back to when I was dancing professionally at a performing arts school, I was the captain. So I'm always turning around and teaching others. When I went to college, even though I was in a program and getting an education in performing arts, I had my own business. I found out in Atlanta they had stopped including PE into the school systems. So I created a dance education program. And I went out to every public school, I mean, in private school, introduced my curriculum, and parents paid me directly. So I was educating and I made that a business. So when I decided to go to grad school, I said, okay, I don't want to be a fraud in doing this. Let me go get my master's in dance education. That took me to New York to Columbia University.
Mhm.
So every time I had to check engage myself with making sure I'm always doing things out of service, meaning operating from my heart,
Hmm.
that door opens and the next step, I could take it. It was illuminated, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Oh my God, you're touching on, I mean, now we're getting really like the core of this conversation here. And I think your background, people's background origin stories are so important. Otherwise, you don't really know who you're talking to. And now
Right.
things really start to make sense and this is start to really light up. Two areas I would love to kind of get into,
Yeah.
which we can probably talk for about 16 hours. But number one is that not only the diversity of who we are as human beings and where we come from, not just skin colors and cultures, but also the diverse income streams as well, revenue streams, and what you just described. For people who are listening to this, if you're a dance teacher, if you want to pursue an art in performing arts or traditional arts, you're thinking about this. I'm sure your parents, grandparents are thinking, oh my goodness, you have to be rich to be a musician. Your family has to have a trust fund in order for you to even think about it.
Right.
I don't think about it.
Right.
But what I'm hearing is this, that you are pursuing something that you love doing, maybe not always, but that's something that you wanted to try and learn from. And on the side, you always, the duality, at least two or more things that you're focusing on. Do you think that that's one area? Do you think that gave you the freedom, the confidence, and
Big time.
what was going through, what have you learned doing that for over the years?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely gives you the confidence, right? You never want to walk into something with the mindset of, oh my God, if I fail. I mean, I think that's a
Hmm.
very negative way to embark upon any journey. You want
Hmm.
to walk in like, hey, I'm going to work on my craft and try to be the best I can be and what it is that I do, right? But
Hmm.
you have to also know your strengths.
Hmm.
So if my strength is, say, theater, because of the way these scripts are written, three-dimensional characters, and I have time to develop it in front of an audience. And as an empath, I know I can bring what is necessary to make you feel what the director and the author, screenwrite, meant for you to feel, right? That may
Hmm.
be a strength. But say if a weakness is auditioning on camera, because I just am not good with doing da 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 ta da, did you like me? Type of
Hmm.
thing. It's something that you got to work on at the same time, right? So what I did was I focused on my strengths in other areas. I find comfort in educating others because I came from a family of educators.
Hmm.
So there's value in taking something that you know or passions and helping others. It kind of keeps resealing what you know, right? You're constantly a student too, if
Hmm.
that makes sense.
Hmm.
So they go hand in hand. I cannot, again, I'm a person who is not going to sit and wait for someone to pay me. And that's the business of acting. You just, if you get a check that day because you booked a job, then your family eats. If you do not, then you don't. That's a very unique business model, right?
Hmm.
It's great when you're young. Great for me when I had nothing to lose. I'm in college. I'm broke anyway. I moved to New York. I was broke anyway in my early 20s, fearless.
Hmm.
Um, but I always then had a job working for a producer, working for a director, because I want to know the back end of this. So when I go to grad school, it was not just for dance education. I also made sure my master's included arts administration
Hmm.
because you have a lot of performing artists who don't know how to run businesses, right?
Good point. Yeah.
Right. So again, I'm a left and right brain thinker. I need to be able to create my own when I need to. That
Hmm.
confidence comes with getting older. It wasn't until I became a mom that I said, you know what, this is great, but it's not doing it because it's taking away too much time from this little person who I love and don't want to miss any opportunity in
Hmm.
her life. So again, I started to shift, take those skill sets, and you start to shift what it is you're doing with them
Hmm.
to create revenue streams.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, that's pretty much been the journey for me. Two trains running at the same time. You have to have one foot in both. If you're going to be a pie maker and want your own bakery, learn how to make pies, but also learn how to run the business, do your books,
Yeah.
create a budget, fundraising, all of that. You have to have different hats in this day and age because, as we've learned in 2020, change happens. How do you pivot, right?
Oh, this is so important because I know that maybe some of you guys watching this are thinking, I actually don't like business. I'll tell you, my mom
Mhm.
herself does not like business. She's a very talented artist, as you can see from all the works done in my office. She kind of made it, she declared she didn't like marketing. She did not like to represent herself. So it was always was always done by someone else.
Mhm.
And I saw that was such a disservice to oneself because until recent years, now in 2020, she's in her late 60s, she learned that she has to represent herself. The
Yeah.
lesson, right, should have come sooner,
Mhm.
but it's better late than never.
That's right.
Now, right? So because when you are giving this permission and this responsibility to someone else, not only won't you learn the necessary skills, and the others, that you have no control over how you're being represented. Um, so to me, I get really excited. Everybody, my clients, my friends know I get really excited about all things business, from spreadsheets to marketing plans to, budgeting, doing films, videos, all that jazz.
Yeah.
But give it a shot. Like, for example, for you in
Mhm.
2020, I'm so glad we got back in touch because of my emails.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm so thrilled that you reached out. But what did you find yourself needing to pivot? What are some of the changes, perhaps some very uncomfortable decisions you have to make to adapt?
Oh. Gosh. I mean, it's funny you said uncomfortable situation. I feel like there's always these ebbs and flow, right, of being uncomfortable in life and
Yeah,
then hitting your stride too. Um,
but you're perhaps more ready. I mean, given you had years of practice prior to 2020, you're
yeah.
probably in a
Well,
better position.
yeah. So again, before, 2020, I was still part-time college professor. Then I'm back. And ironically, I'm going to tell you how things come full circle. In my 20s, early 30s, I was so focused on just being the performer.
Hmm.
And then after I became a mom, wanted to lend my time more to being in control of what my career looked like.
Hmm.
So out of everything, it just fell into my lap an opportunity to teach at a performing arts college in Miami. I mean, that was off my radar since grad school. By then, 15 years had passed, but I ran into someone who said, "Hey, we're looking for someone at our school who has professional acting experience, a master's in dance or acting."
Hmm.
And I was like, "Wait, that's me. This is
Yeah.
crazy." So I went to meet with the dean, and by the time I left, my name was on that syllabus. So things came back around. This is what I'm kind of talking about when you're living your truth and living your purpose from a place of authenticity. Things pop up in your life that are least expected. Because remember, my original plan was to be a dentist.
Yeah, exactly. It finds you. Yeah.
That's it. But the universe had another way. As long as I kept saying, yes, this feels right. Yes, this feels good to me.
Hmm.
And looking at opportunities, to match or combine or hybrid,
Hmm.
those have always happened where I've had to change and shift. So I was teaching at Miami-Dade College 3 years, and a very dear friend of mine, she's a professor at University of Miami. She goes, "I would love for you to come talk to my college students at the business school about marketing and branding." I
Yeah.
was like, what do I know about that? She's like, "Maisha, you came from an acting background." And I was like, you know what? She's right. I was teaching public speaking. Again, same skill set.
Hmm.
Actors know how to market themselves, but we didn't have social media when I was doing this.
You have to, right? You're kind of
Right.
your own company.
You are your own company. So, I mean, the same way we know how to do our own hair and makeup,
Yeah.
we know how to present ourselves, pitch ourselves, brand ourselves.
Hmm.
So when I walked into that school with her, I had already designed something, again, coming from teachers, college at Columbia, knew how to design a curriculum to give people the skill sets that we learned in the entertainment industry, which
Hmm.
is why entrepreneurs need to be comfortable with public speaking. You
Hmm.
better believe it. Now, in this generation with social media, you cannot be shy. and you have the next upcoming Facebook, and someone comes as a reporter and puts the mic in your face, and you can't say what your brand's about in 2 sentences and own it with confidence and answer questions and deal with crisis communication, you got to be present and on top of it.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
said, oh, I've shed that passion that worked for me in my 20s and 30s. Now that I'm mid 30 to 40, I go, and as a mom, this is where I want to be now. I want to
Hmm.
teach other people how to do this. And more people are going to need it. Oh, and YouTube is, people creating their own channels, great. And Instagram live, great. You guys need me. So
Yeah.
that's where that pivot happened. And again, it just came from, let me see what everybody needs help with. And
Mhm.
what skills do I bring that only I can do when you call my name, you know? And so that's how it lended itself to that. Um, when I decided to sit down and really create a plan around United We Slay,
Mhm.
it was intended as a docu-series first.
You're right, I remember.
Yeah. And a friend who happens to be her husband's over at Ruckus Avenue Radio saw my deck and he goes, "How would you like to do this as a radio show?" And I thought, oh, I like this
Yeah.
because it gives me an opportunity to highlight and feature all these amazing, culturally diverse women who
Hmm.
I've met along my journey. I'm talking about rock stars who I never saw on television. Because remember, we talked about
Yeah.
people being selected for different things and they're overlooked because they may not have a billion followers on Instagram,
Hmm.
but these people are changing lives and making impact. So I told him, oh, yeah, I'm comfortable. Let's do it. If I'm teaching public speaking, okay, I got the radio part, but it was really about highlighting the people in the world that were doing things that were changing lives. That's the premise behind United We Slay. Didn't
And
matter what
stories,
age. Hmm?
right? And the stories would otherwise wouldn't be heard possibly, and
Right.
a platform created for everyone else. So that's
And this was,
lovely.
thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that because this came to be before 2020. So
Hmm.
then when we got to 2020 and I started to see what was happening in American culture
Mm.
with the racial tension, and people are looking for content from people of colors, specifically African Americans, I was like, oh, we got this.
Yeah.
Yeah, like what is it we need? Because we knew we always existed. I
Hmm.
knew that other cultures always existed, but I think if you're not a minority, you don't feel a need to go and connect.
Hmm. Hmm.
So the groundwork was already laid, so to speak. And it was a joy to be able to bring people up that look like the world that I knew.
Yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
I can already think of, a couple of potential introductions or how in this way I can actually share your podcast episode or your podcast overall, to people who really crave this because what I
Yes.
learned, especially as you mentioned this past year between the pandemic and racial pressure in this country
Mhm.
and the multitude of, the different types of, I guess, struggles that we live through from, for the African American communities, as well as at the beginning of the year when the pandemic came out. It was called sort of the China virus. And then there were
Yeah,
different attacks on the Asian communities against people who are Chinese and people who are not Chinese. And
right.
so it was incredibly upsetting. So then we started, and I started hearing from all over the place to say, oh, well, fine, I want to learn more about you people. I want to learn more about African American cultures. Where do I
Right.
find that? And of course, I also have a very diverse group of people, and my black friends are telling me, Faye, I'm just really busy these days. All of a sudden, everybody's coming to me asking for these questions, and it
Right.
creates that trigger
Oh,
of
yeah.
look, for some people, for some group is like, oh, there was only one person I know who's African American, let me go right to him and I will get educated on. But I think what I love about your show is
Mhm.
highlighting these stories so that those stories are there, and the
Yeah.
longer you run your show, the more powerful it is, the more diverse it will be, so people can, with you being a teacher, really, by
Mhm.
training and by interest. So now people can go to a more centralized place where these stories have been curated, and you can listen to it when it isn't a headline on CNN.
Right. That's
So,
right. Because there's an immense a lot of pressure when the world is looking to you to tell a narrative of an entire racial group. What?
Correct. Yeah.
Like, I didn't get that leisure. No one gave me a reading list when I needed to learn about the plight of, our Jewish brothers and sisters. I
Hmm.
self-activated that. I wanted to learn about the Holocaust. I went to the museum. I talked to a
Hmm.
bunch of people. Listen, I look at it like this. If you have a portfolio in life, right? They tell you, say in business, to diversify it. Why is it that your friend folder, portfolio doesn't look like this? Diversify your life.
Hmm.
If in the year 2020 you have a homogeneous group around you, something is wrong.
Hmm.
I'm sorry, especially living in a place like America. This place was called the melting pot
Hmm.
for a
Once
reason.
was, yeah.
For a reason. And the more you do that, the more you realize everybody's more the same, with the
Hmm.
exception of some traditional cultural values, right? Passed down for generations. But it's pretty much still the same. We're
Hmm.
the same. We put our pants legs on the same. We are, pregnant the same as women. The men are going through the same headaches and dating. But then, we're more alike than we are different. And so it's a thing of empathy again, connecting us. And you have to put forth the effort. If you really want to genuinely get to know people, make yourself available, but
Hmm.
don't put the pressure on one person to
Yeah.
tell your entire plight. Are you kidding?
You're right. And
Exhausting.
everybody has such a different
Yeah.
experience too. And I almost forgot to ask you this question. Just
Mhm.
listening to you speak, and you grew up with brothers, but you also, all of you grew up with both parents who
Mhm.
are very into and advocating for, social justice and
Oh, yeah.
equality, and they're very vocal, very known in the community.
Oh, yeah.
What is the impact that your parents had? on- You're like,
It's,
what didn't they have? So maybe we should go through the short list.
oh,
What was it like growing up in a household like that?
social activism was at the
Yeah.
forefront of our minds. I mean, the first boycott I went to, I was 6 years old with my mother. My mom worked for Operation Push, which is led by Jesse Jackson, Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Mm,
Growing up in Hyde Park, we lived a few blocks away from Louis Farrakhan.
mm,
Chicago was very much a social activist, hands-on, proud people, community where we were making strides and differences, and the rest of the country was watching. I was exposed to it at a very early age. So again, community, justice for all, seeing
mm,
people, no matter what the socioeconomic status was. You never knew if that kid who unfortunately had to grow up in the projects with limited food,
mhm,
you know, who didn't have means, was the next potential Barack or the next potential, you know, um, concert pianist. He just needed the tools, right?
mhm,
These were things we saw. You are born into a circumstance. You are not your circumstance. You can overcome these circumstances. You can move forward, be upward mobile, and get to where you're going with support, help, and the means.
mhm,
That was something that was at the forefront of our home. It's something I lead with today. We always had people in and out of our house. So again, my parents were educators and social activists. It's about community. If
mhm,
one person was not eating, well, bring them in. We got food for everybody.
mhm,
So it has always been a service,
mhm,
being of service. My parents were surrogates to a lot of Black children who didn't have healthy relationships with their parents. Me and my siblings had to share our parents in that way. So I
oh,
couldn't be selfish. I couldn't, to this day, I have so many play brothers, sisters from here to Uganda. My mom goes and finds folks all day long and she goes, "What you need, honey?" And she's that person and she
mm,
educates them. They lend their relationships, they mentor.
mm,
So when you grow up with that in front of you, I can't just show up and say, "Oh, it's just about Maisha."
mm,
I can't have that vanity deal. It has to be, how do I open this door for 50 other fays,
mhm,
that I can because I have access to it now. How
yeah,
can I help in that way? And so that has been the legacy of the Dyson family. It's something I feel tremendously on my shoulders. It's something I share with my daughter.
mhm,
You cannot be selfish in
mhm,
this world and expect it to become better. If you have information, Faye, which you do so lovely, and you curate it and you organize it and you're giving people gems, and you're doing it because it's what you feel is the right thing to do, and other
Mm,
people are winning from it, so be it. We have to have that. We have to have that. I just see it like how we need water. How
mm.
else can we grow? And so you're constantly learning, and your audience is too. And hopefully they take that and teach someone else. So that's been our upbringing.
Oh, what a great mantra. I mean, some people hearing this probably thinking like, "Oh, Maisha's so lucky." And I think they're right because you've been exposed to parents who are so loving, who are so accepting of others. Not only I think they've been exposed to a very diverse group of people they know who desperately need help, but I think they seek them out too. I bet your parents are exactly like that. Oh, this weekend has gone really well, but wonder who needs help. They actually look for them. I think that is really something. I haven't met your parents, but if I have the pleasure to do so, I'll be sure to give them a huge hug, as I will for you as well, because something really kind of like feels personal. I don't think I ever brought this up, but I interviewed Ralph Peterson Jr., who's African American, really famous drummer. And not to give away his age, but a number of years ago, I think many years ago, I met his mom, who since then passed away. But I saw this woman, and I don't know what it is. That we're in a crowded room. He had a lot of students performing different instruments. The moment his mom walked in, I was immediately attached to her. I just felt, I was probably already 30 at the time. I felt like
Yeah,
a little girl. I felt so safe. I couldn't describe,
yeah,
not that it was any environment that, it was a very loving day and
yeah,
environment. Everybody's playing music, but when I saw her, I just knew she had to hug me. Like I
yeah,
I felt something really tremendous that I never felt before. Um,
yeah.
I don't know how to describe it. She possesses something that just made me feel immediately attached to.
I feel that it's when people open their hearts, right? I mean,
Mm,
listen, my parents are not perfect, and my family isn't. We all have our demons, okay? But
mm,
I will say, when you put that hat on, or that intention of moving through this world with your heart open,
mm,
that's where that coming of service is really about. Other people feel it. They come to it, brings it to you. So I guess it becomes that like attracting like situation. If I
mm,
am closed off, you're not going to feel like coming to give me a hug if I walk in that room. But if
mm,
I come in and I'm smiling and I have something in my eye, or something that you see
mm.
that maybe we could give each other, then I find myself doing. I'll walk over to someone else and go, "Hey, I feel like I'm supposed to know you. I'm Maisha. Who are you?"
Yeah, I'm
Right?
supposed to know you. I
I'm
love that
supposed
feeling.
to know you. Yeah, but you have to take your guard down, right? You have to be comfortable being vulnerable, because some
Mm.
people may say not today.
Yeah,
But you,
exactly. And then you got to be okay with that. You can be assertive, but you're not always going to get your way, but it's better to know what you want, to know how to present yourselves and let that natural energy attract and just kind of let things hang and let it all happen to you. So the last two, respect your time, Aisha. There's one more area I feel like I'm really curious to explore. As my emails, as you've reading the series, have been talking a lot about diversify your income, my different income streams, and I'm being very transparent. Not each every income stream is millions of dollars, but I'm showing people a little bit here, a little bit there. But just based on what you brought up in the most recent moments, it makes me think about the next email. It's in draft mode. I call it no income stream. It's not a joke, but I said to myself, I realized for 10, 20 years already that I'm very willing to work for free
yeah,
for at least a couple of reasons. And, I'm sure you and your parents have all helped people that you
mhm,
didn't get a penny from. And then you devoted it's love and devotion. And I've been doing that too. Even in the year 2020, I have so much joy helping people. And I guess how to form it into a question is one, sometimes people don't fully understand. And in
mhm,
a world, especially in this moment where resources feel limited, that
right,
jobs are lost, the
right,
PPP are somehow sent to already millionaires and billionaires, and the
right,
everyday people are struggling. So
right.
people sometimes are like, I'm very lucky not have encountered that. But other people may say, what are you doing this for? Why are you helping me? What's the intention behind it? Because I've heard this from other people.
Wow.
Right? How do you help people process? What's your take, and how do we help other people process that?
Wow. I haven't had anybody question, like, why are you giving advice on something per se?
Hmm.
Which is interesting. I'm just like, wow, I'm wonder like I don't even know what my response would be if someone did that because yeah, I'm just like,
Mm.
you know how you find out, like, here's my, okay, let me go back. If I'm offering an online course and you're offering this to people in corporate, you know that these corporations can afford what you're
Mhm.
giving. Okay. So
Correct. Yeah.
I have an income because I do believe in charity, but when it comes to your career, you also have to know your worth.
Yeah.
And I found that the hard way, especially being a minority.
Mm.
A lot of people expected me to show up and not pay me anything. With a master's degree from Ivy League College and 20 years, behind me of professional work, and you don't think you need to pay me, let alone on time? No, thank you. You have to be assertive and knowing your worth and when to say, no, this is my value, this is my service, this is what I charge. Once that's taken care of, and you can stop and you look back at the community at whole, and I go, you know what? Here's an online mini course. See if you like the way I speak. See if you believe what I'm talking about. Try it out. Tell me if I'm full of shit. Come back.
Yeah.
Let me go back and recreate one. How's 99 bucks, guys? Can we all afford that? Because what I'm going to give you, in addition to what I explained, is actually going to be more.
Hmm.
Again, it's not, we're not, I can only speak for myself. I'm not a selfish person where it's, oh, I only gonna give you the 5 things I talked about. There's always bonuses. It's
Hmm.
always, oh, this plus. So I'll go back to when I'm teaching at the college, they paid me to be there to do a job. But what my students got in exchange was those students who wanted to go to New York and LA, they're
Hmm.
college kids. They didn't have the relationships. They didn't know agents. They didn't know producers. They didn't know directors. I opened up my Rolodex and said, hey, let me know who you need. Sent
Mm.
an email on their behalf. Now you've got a contact. Now if you want to go work in Hollywood, you can go get a job and use my name. Well,
Hmm.
that's priceless, right? So again, you got to look at the value and also the person who you're in front of. Do they value what you're giving?
Yeah. Mhm. If
It's
they
a two-way
do,
street. Mm-hmm.
exactly. If they do, they value you,
Mm-hmm.
and you are, as a creator, you're having tremendous amount of fun. You are learning
Mm-hmm.
something new you wouldn't otherwise from your other paid projects. Then I
Yes.
argue that could be a really great opportunity. And, I think the way I formed the question wasn't so much of if people are really pushing you away, being so negative,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And not nice or nasty even, then you're not obligated to help them. You can end the
No.
conversation.
Yeah.
But sometimes people are a little bit puzzled by it. They're kind of intrigued by it because we're
Yeah.
living in a world where there's, given then you give, and then like, how do I react to this? Why, I didn't even, I can't pay you. I don't have enough money to pay you. Why do you see this endeavor all of a sudden become a shared vision? So that's something I've been thinking about. Instead of thinking my brand, Feisworld, clearly it's about me, my world, and people in it. But I started to kind of try to elevate myself, my brand, to be about other people and
Yeah.
service of others as well. That maybe I can call something that's obviously my legacy, but
Yeah.
I think our legacies are ingrained in the works that other people are doing, the lives that they're living.
That's
So
it.
yeah.
You just nailed it. And that's the whole premise behind United We Slay. I mean,
Hmm.
I don't introduce the show talking about me. I go, hey guys, in an effort to, talk about these badass, amazing women I meet in the world, I'm bringing them on the show and we're going to cover every topic. Tune in. And it's about them, it's their spotlight. I no longer want to be on stage. I'm super comfortable being behind the camera
Hmm.
on the mic. Please, guys, I want to interview you. Tell me your story. Share your story because I have been through a lot now. And I want to know there are days I'm insecure, days that I'm winning, days that, am I the only one? Oh, I'm not. Thank you. Am I crazy? No, I'm not. Okay,
Hmm.
good. And so that's value. That's community, right? That's the community currency, which we talked about. It's give and take.
Hmm.
So when we talk about people questioning, those things that you give as freebies, the best example I could give is when you go to certain cities and you see these little clear mailboxes and they have books and they're like, please take one.
Yeah.
Take
Yeah.
what you need, leave what you don't. That's how I see it. It may not be for everybody.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you're on to this podcasting journey. I can see you doing it
Thank
for a long
you.
time. And
Yeah.
because just like you said, now these are the little boxes of books, but now as you travel worldwide, you already have friends worldwide.
Yeah.
Now you're gonna have, you're opening up new doors and literally new doors where your guests will welcome you in, let's just say after the pandemic. And
Mhm.
I lived that life for
Yeah.
many years before the pandemic, and it's just so beautiful
Yeah.
to enjoy lunch, dinner, time with my podcast guests, families, watching their kids grow,
Yes.
watching their paintings all of a sudden appear, not all of a sudden, but appear in my office and to really feel their presence. So
Sure.
it's so incredible, Maisha. Oh, I mean, I feel like that was so easy to take up the entire hour talking to you. What are
Same.
some of the, yeah, like how do people find you to
Yeah.
consume with your work, your wisdom and knowledge?
I'm here. So, okay, I'm the introverted extrovert, and as I told you before we started chatting, I am sometimes I'm on and off social media, but my presence is on. I'm on Instagram
Hmm.
at my Maisha Dyson, and yeah, you can just contact me there. United We Slay Media on Instagram. I get emails that way as well. You can tune into the show. Yeah, we just kind of go from there, but that's where you can find me. Um, a lot of times, and I was going to say this too, Faye, as creative content producers, which is like that position we're in now,
Hmm.
when we find people whose stories just blow our minds, we're able to take it up a notch. And so, like, I've been developing some projects from guests that were previously on my show
Yeah.
outside of just the podcast. So now we're in the space of, creating TV shows and things like that about their story because they're phenomenal, right?
Yay.
So it's stuff like that that kind of comes up, and I go, God, this is such a fun space that we are in
Mm.
that makes it all worthwhile.
Mm. Exactly. That's how I created my documentary. I absolutely loved it because then it's a different medium and then people have a different feel. Then you grow as a result of doing podcasts and the documentary.
Yes.
And oh, it's just I just announced it. I'm gonna remaster my documentary and produce a longer form content with my producer, her mom. So excited about that. Yeah.
Perfect time. This is the perfect time to do it. Everyone's looking for content, something in, diverse, telling stories. This is
Yeah.
the perfect time. 2020. Thank you for that. You
Yeah.
know?
Oh, it's awesome. All right, Maisha, all your links, descriptions are in in the description wherever you're watching this, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. Twitter is a little bit trickier, but please connect with Maisha and listen to her show and really recommend it to other people as well. It's such an opportunity because she's done the work, so you don't have to. So thanks again, Maisha. I'm going to take us
Thank
offline
you.
now.
Thank you for having me.